Welcome to the White House. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We are delighted to have you all here for our last and final Black History Month while President Obama is in office. I say that exactly, boo. I've been here for each and every one of them. We keep getting better and better each year, and a special focus this year is the young people. We started with 51 amazing little girls and young women who did a dance performance, and you are really our bookend near the end, and celebrating our young people is so important to you. Each and every one of the students who are here and your faculty, administrators who support you and lift you up, you are beacons of hope to not just me, who's old enough to be all of your parents, but also to the next generation who looks up to you. You may think you stand on the shoulders of President Obama, but there are young people coming along who are going to stand on your shoulders as well. I want to give a special shout out to those who are here from Clark University who won the HBCU. It's the HBCU challenge because you care about making sure that the people in your community have health care. So stand up. Let's give you a proper shout out. That's what I'm talking about, leading by example. So today is also particularly special to me. My dad, James Bowman, went to Howard University. Anyone here from Howard? He went for both undergrad and for medical school. And I'm very proud of his life as not only a physician, but many ways in which he led by example, including he was the first African American to attend St. Luke's Hospital in Chicago to do his residency. And when he got there, they said to him, well, you have to come in the back door, and you can't live in the dorm. So he said, all right, I won't live in the dorm, but I didn't work so hard in undergrad and medical school to come in a back door. So he, on his first day of residency, he walked in the front door. And everybody's like, oh my God, he walked in the front door. So he's like, well, what's up with that? This is what I've earned the right to do. So the next day when he gets to work, all of the orderlies and staff and nurses and support of the hospital that were Black were waiting by the front door, and they walked in with him. And so it shows you what one person can do. Now, you all don't have those kind of barriers today that my father had, but let's face it, there are still many barriers out there, and there are many reasons why you have to show courage. And so we want you to have that courage. We want you to be breaking all kinds of glass ceilings and going through doors. My great-grandfather, who was an architect, spent most of his professional career designing buildings at Tuskegee, was then called Institute, now Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, and many of those buildings are there today. And I had a chance to go to Tuskegee last year with the First Lady when she gave the commencement speech, which was a really special moment for me. So I am deeply proud of their legacies, and I want your children and grandchildren to feel the same way about your legacies, knowing that there are so many aspiring young people who benefit greatly from that very special HBCU education. As the president has said, HBCUs were founded courageously as, and I quote, vibrant centers of intellectual inquiry and engines of scientific discovery and innovation. I like that. One more time. Vibrant centers of intellectual inquiry and engines of scientific discovery and innovation. That's what you all are. That's what you mean to him. That's what you mean not just to the African American community, but to our entire country, because Americans all over the country benefit from the extraordinary education that you've received. So in this room alone, there are talents that shape the future of science and technology and politics and art and fashion and business, and maybe some soon-to-be extraordinary people in fields we haven't even invented yet. People lifting up the visibility of African Americans in film, such as Will Packer. Well, come on, where are you? I just met you. Stand up, let everybody give you a shout out. And Brian Williams with Steph Africa, who just performed at the White House for a Black History Month celebration earlier today. Stand up, come on, earlier this week. Thank you. But as we celebrate your education and the accomplishments that have been made possible, we also know that there's a lot of work ahead. And we may not be here with you as you do that work, but there is life after the presidency, and the president and first lady are committed to spend the rest of their life helping young people as they have done since they've been here, but they can't do it without your help. So we want you to be engaged. As the president said recently, did any of you see this amazing video of a young girl who was crying about President Obama? If you haven't seen it, you got to go on YouTube. So her grandmother posted it, and she basically said her birthday is the same day as the president's, August 4th. And so her whole life, she was, I don't know, maybe six or seven, her whole life, President Obama has been her president. And her grandmother broke it to her that he wasn't going to be president for much longer. Well, she burst into tears, and she's saying, "It's too soon. It's too soon." Well, I feel the same way. It is too soon. And so the president wrote back on Facebook, and I thought his message was an important one, which is why I raised it, other than it was darling. He said, "Don't worry, dry your tears. I'm not going anywhere, because next I'm going to have the most important office of all, the office of citizenship. And I will work with you as a citizen." And so that's what I hold on to each day, since I've been here since day one. And so a lot of people say, "Well, you're running out of steam, or you're burned out, or you're tired." I'm like, are you kidding me? I get to work for President Obama? Oh no, they're gonna have to drag me out. I'll be turning out the lights, waving goodbye to them as they leave. Anyway, I share that with you. But on a much more somber note, this is why we have more work to do. In 2013, 40% of white people between the ages of 25 and 29 had a bachelor's degree or more. 25% of white people, 40%, excuse me, of white people. In the African American community in the same age demographic, 20%. That's not okay. That is not okay. You gotta encourage your younger brothers and sisters to aspire to and go to college. And that's a part of the First Lady's Reach Higher initiative, where we want to make it as easy as possible for people to have that dream. She often tells a story about going to public school in Chicago. She went to Whitney Young, and her college counselor said, "Well, you should, don't even think about going to a Princeton or anywhere like that. That's totally out of your reach." And because her brother was there on a basketball scholarship, she thought about it. Well, there are so many young people in our country that don't think about going to college at all. And so part of what we have to do is encourage them and nurture them and be role models to them, so they understand what a college education will mean to transform their lives. So we need your help in that too. You play a critical role. The president has taken a number of steps to address this challenge. So expanding our Pell Grant funding by 70%, which has happened over his watch at a time when we have had a shrinking federal budget. He has made funding HBCUs and expanding opportunities to have college affordable for every American, and particularly his targeting resources to HBCUs. He's also launched My Brother's Keeper initiative. Have any of you heard about My Brother's Keeper? All right, well, we want to make sure before you leave here today you know all about that. And it's about helping young boys and men of color, regardless of their zip code or station in life, ensure that they get the same fair shot as everybody else has. And we also have worked with Melissa Harris Perry at Wake University and have raised over $100 million to help girls and young women of color, because we know they have unique challenges too, trying to break that sexual assault to prison pipeline, ensuring that they have positive role models in their life, making sure that they take pride in their body, take pride in what they have the potential to do, and can aspire to do well as well. So we have a lot of hard work to do, and we need your help. And the president and this entire country are so lucky to have, particularly the young people. I do want to thank the administrators and the faculty and all of you, because obviously they get the education because of what you provide for them. But you're the ones that have to feel empowered and encouraged and nurtured to move on to the next step in your life. And all I can tell you is that I hope every one of you feels confident that whatever your dreams are, doesn't have to be a dream to be president of the United States, whatever your dream is, that you feel that there is a wave of support behind you, pushing you on your way. And it means you still have to work really hard, and it still means that you're going to fail. And my whole theory on failure is if you are not failing, you are not pushing far enough outside of your comfort zone. We have all had setbacks in life. That's what life is all about. But it's not what happens to you, as my mom always said, it's what you do about it. And so we're counting on you. We are really counting on you. We have tried to move that arc of the universe, moral universe, a little closer towards justice, but it's a long arc, and it only works when everybody is pushing in the same direction. So I want to close the way I started by saying thank you so much for being with us today. there were 700 people who applied to be here. And the reason you're here is because you were first in line. You came on first, and half of life is showing up and showing up punctually. So with that, have a great day, and thank you for sharing Black History Month with us.
Thank you, Valerie. And for those of you coming in, there's a lot of seats that are sprinkled in the mix, so don't gravitate to the back. Please come up, because we want this to be a very interactive conversation. If you take a look at the screen, we have the Wi-Fi passcode and name, along with the hashtags that we're going to use for the discussion today. At some point during the discussion, we'll also do Q&A, so there's microphones on the side, so think of questions. But right now, before we get to Mr. Will Packer, we're going to have Ivory Tolson, who is Executive Director of the President's Initiative on HBCUs, to come up and give a few words.
Good afternoon. All right, thank you all so much for joining us for this occasion. I'm Ivory Tolson. I'm the Executive Director of the White House Initiative on HBCUs. And what we do is we serve as a liaison between the federal government and the 100 HBCUs that qualify for federal support. The federal government is responsible for about $5 billion annually to HBCUs in revenue. Some of that comes from the Title IV money that students receive to go to school. But a lot of it, close to $1 billion of it, comes from competitive grants and contracts across federal agencies. There are 32 federal agencies that are under President Obama's executive order. All of those agencies have a liaison within them that we communicate with them, and we work with them to develop plans and strategies to help HBCUs to be fairly represented in the portfolio of grants and contracts that we award. So it's very rewarding work, and the most rewarding part of my work is seeing HBCUs getting resources to do the types of things on their campuses that provide outstanding opportunities, not just for the students, but research that really revolutionize how we do business here in the United States. One of the other things that we do with the initiative is we have something called the HBCU All-Star Program. Our HBCU All-Stars are students who serve as ambassadors between our initiative and their respective campuses. These students are selected based on their scholastic merit, their campus-based leadership, and also their civic engagement. Our application for our new class just came out today, so if you know any current college students who you think would fit that profile and fit those 3 criteria, I'll let them know about it. But one of the things that I've learned about HBCU students and alumni from that program is how much in common the students have, even though they come from universities that are vastly different. HBCUs are very diverse. The largest HBCUs have about 10,000 students. The smallest ones have less than 1,000 students. There are about 12 HBCUs that are community colleges. There are HBCUs that consistently rank very highly in a lot of different categories. There are other HBCUs that don't really see themselves on any of the national rankings. But one of the things I realized when we put those students together was you couldn't differentiate between universities based on the students, because HBCUs all attract the certain profile of an African-American students and students who are of other race ethnicities that have a certain degree of interest in helping others and reaching out. One of the HBCU All-Stars was a community college student at a community college in Tougaloo, Shelton State, and he's actually at the University of Alabama right now. But I just remember seeing this community college student who had to go to a community college before he transitioned into a 4-year institution, participating in the same leadership activities as all of the HBCU students from the largest HBCUs and the ones that typically get a lot more recognition. So HBCUs do occupy a very important place in the fabric of higher education in the United States, and I'm very proud to be working with President Obama's initiative. And also, when we look at the federal budget for 2017, we see some of the most aggressive proposals for HBCUs in a very long time. So that means if we can do what we need to do, and it's going to take a collective effort, but if we do what we need to do to make sure that everybody who's in any position of power understands how important the American College Promise Act is, understands how important these changes in Pell is to our institutions, then we'll realize the benefits of President Obama's initiatives long after he's left office. So thank you all again for participating in this dialogue, and I look forward to meeting with you all and working with you all to sustain our HBCUs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivory. So I don't want to take up a lot of time going through long, drawn-out introductions, but the first person I'd like to bring up to the stage is powerhouse producer, Mr. Will Packer, also graduate of FAMU. Oh, Rattlers are here. Okay. And also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And Alphas are here too. As most of you already know, he has produced many #1 films from Ride Along 2, No Good Deed, Think Like a Man, Ride Along, I already said Ride Along, Obsessed, and Stomp the Yard. He was also one of the executive producers of Straight Outta Compton. I could go on and on and on. He cares about HBCUs, he cares about our people, and we're gonna take a moment now to have somewhat of a TED Talk with Will over the next 10 minutes to talk about how going to an HBCU has impacted his life, and then we'll go ahead and get the panel up right after that. So, Will. Do you want to do it from here? Yeah, wherever you like. It's up to you. Let's see how long that mic actually goes.
You know, I'm gonna start.
You'll start over?
Yes. I feel like I'm trying to take the shine. What's happening, y'all? How you doing? I feel like Stephanie's trying to take some of my shine. First of all, she said, "Oh, FAMU's in the house." We don't do it like that. Let me explain something to you about HBCU grads. We are very, very proud of wherever you went. I don't care if it's 3 students that went to Mississippi, back of the bus, community college. If it's a HBCU, we ride for ours. So, my name is Will Packer. I went to Florida, the Florida A&M University. I am a rattler. It don't take but one of us, but I see I got a few of us here. Y'all hear that hissing? That's because we are rattlers, okay? That's how we refer to ourselves. I want to give props to all the other HBCUs that are here, that are represented. I know Clark is in the house. I know Hampton's in the house. I see Howard, absolutely. Tuskegee Southern. SC State, Bulldogs, Spelman in the house. All right, the house, absolutely. So, I see, he said something I never even heard of. What'd you say, Macon? See, Lincoln, look at him, Lincoln. There's only one from Lincoln. It was only one when he went to Lincoln, but let me tell you something. He is proud of his Lincoln experience. I'm just messing with you. But so, I know firsthand, what the HBCU experience is like and is about. The fact that we are here where we are, celebrating HBCUs, let's not let that be lost on any of us, how great an opportunity this is, how fortunate we are to be in this house having this conversation. Make no mistake, I don't know who's gonna be in this house in a little over a year from now. But I do know that some of the aspirants don't place the same value as the current administration on historically black colleges and universities and the tremendous talent that they foster and that they generate. So let's give ourselves a hand because we are here. Let's make sure we know that we acknowledge and properly acknowledge how great this moment is. Let me just tell you quickly a little bit about my story. So, I grew up in Florida, right? I was this kid from St. Pete, Florida, and I was a nerd. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was good in school. Didn't mean I wasn't good at other stuff. I was, in athletics and extracurricular. I was student body president. You couldn't tell me that I wasn't balling as a high school senior balls, right? I had the grades, I had the test scores, I had all that. The last place that I wanted to go was an HBCU. Be honest with you. I felt like I'm too good to go to an HBCU. I did. The reason I felt that way is because I would be in class making my straight A's, and there would be people in class that I knew were barely coming to class and not doing their work, and they would be like, oh, you know what, I want to go to FAMU, or I want to go to Bethune-Cookman University. Those were the historically black colleges in my state at that time. And I would look at them, I'd be like, oh, well, I'm not going wherever you going. You didn't put in the same amount of work that I did. So I'm not about to devalue my education sitting next to you, Ray Ray. Here's what happened. I was headed to an Ivy, all right? I got accepted. I was going to Ivy League school. I felt like, you know what, that's where I need to be because I'm good like that. Funny thing happened along the way to me heading to that Ivy. At Florida A&M University at the time, we had a president who was very, very aggressive about going after corporate dollars, okay? And because there were initiatives like this one, you had corporations that said, you know what, we see the importance in historically black colleges and universities, and we're going to give them money. And FAMU had a lot of money at that time because we had an amazing president. His name was Dr. Frederick S. Humphreys, and Dr. Humphreys had gone out and gotten all this scholarship money, okay? Y'all hear where I'm headed? He got all this scholarship money from these corporations because that's how it works. Because if he didn't have those relationships, he would not have been able to compete to go out and get the best and the brightest minds, the best and the brightest African-American minds that were in the country at that time. So he then, now that he had this corporate support, because of initiatives like the one that we're at today that said these universities are important, he was able to come down and offer me a scholarship. A huge scholarship, because his idea was, you know what, there's no reason that the Ivy Leagues should have the best and the brightest African-American students around the country. They just get them by default because they're the best students, and so they go to the best schools. Well, I want to compete on that level. There's no reason why I can't go out and get those national merit and national achievement scholars, at the time that's what it was called, to go to my school. So he offered me a huge scholarship. My room was paid for, my board was paid for, my tuition was paid for, my books were paid for, all of that. Guess what the Ivy Leagues were offering me at the time? Old smart Will Packer with the good grades and the high test scores. Sister right there said, you got it. Nothing. They were offering me nothing. Guess what my parents said to me when word got back that Florida A&M was offering me an opportunity that nobody else was. They said, guess where you going to college? I said, but I don't want to go to FAMU. Now, here's the secret. I said that I didn't want to go because I felt like, you know what, I should go to an Ivy because I got these good test scores. But here was the real secret that I was hiding, and the real reason I didn't want to go to an HBCU. Because I was afraid. Why was I afraid? I had achieved so much. I had done so well. I had gotten to that point. Let me tell you what I had always done. Whenever I walked into a room in my majority classrooms, I was always the only black kid, especially in the gifted classes. I was that one, and I was that one smart black kid. And because people come in with their own preconceived notions and perceptions of who you are and what you can do, as soon as they see you, that's who we are, we go to snap judgments, people would always underestimate me. And I used that to my advantage all through my high school career. And I realized that once I went to a place where everybody looked something sort of kind of like me, what was I going to do to be able to stand out? See, that's the misconception about HBCUs. People think they're monolithic. People think that they're not diverse. They're not representative of the real world. These are the kinds of things that you hear when people talk about why are HBCUs important. Here's the thing, that if you go a little bit deeper under the surface, you have to understand that there is a competitive environment that is fostered at a historically black college or university that is truly about what can you do? What do you bring to the table? What do you do that the person sitting next to you doesn't do? See, once you stripped away the fact that I was standing out in my honors classes because I looked different from everybody else, I had to do something else in order to stand out. I was driven to succeed. I was somebody that had always been successful. I always wanted to try to be the best at whatever it was I did. And I was afraid that once you took away that advantage from me, it was going to be hard. And guess what? It was hard. And that's exactly what my little butt needed at that time. I needed it to be hard. I didn't need something that gave me a leg up. So I went to Florida A&M University, and I had to compete. Now I was there, and I was trying to figure out which fraternity did I want to be in. I was trying to figure out what was I going to do on student government. What was I going to do in extracurricular? What was I going to do in policy? What was I going to do to change and make an impact on the landscape at my school, because that's the type of person that I was. While I was there, I hooked up with somebody who was my line brother. He became my fraternity brother. His name was Rob Hardy. He always wanted to be a movie director. That was his vision and his dream. I never would have met him if I didn't go to that university. He was also somebody that, interestingly enough, was headed to an Ivy League school. These were two of the best and brightest young African-American minds in the country at that time, who now were placed under one roof at this university. He wanted to be a movie director. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. I just knew I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be a boss. I just knew that whatever it was I did, it was going to be for me. So I met him, and I helped him to make his first small movie. And it was a movie that was called Chocolate City. Chocolate City turned out to be the first movie that was filmed by HBCU students at an HBCU. And it was a movie that was about college life as we knew it. It's a terrible little movie. I hope you can't find it anywhere. I see some of y'all writing it down. I hope you can't Google it. I've tried to destroy all copies of that because it would mess up my career right now. But you got to start somewhere. And it was a movie that starred our friends, and, you know, we shot it on our campus, and it wasn't a lot that we knew about the technical aspects of filmmaking. We just knew that we had a story that we wanted to tell. And we finished our little movie, and we thought that once you make a movie, you send it to Hollywood. Hollywood picks it up. You make millions of dollars. You buy your Benz and your big house, and now you're a movie maker. Well, it didn't happen quite like that. We made our little movie. We sent it to Hollywood, and nobody cared. We could not get the assistants on the phone. Nobody was calling us back about our little Chocolate City movie. Nobody west of the panhandle of Florida could care less about our little movie, much less way out in Hollywood. Now, we didn't know what we didn't know, and sometimes there can be power in naivete. Not power in ignorance, mind you, but in naivete. We didn't know what we didn't know. So we rented out our on-campus auditorium, and we did the world premiere of our little movie, Chocolate City, okay? We made everybody get dressed up. It was a black tie affair in Tallahassee, Florida. You couldn't get in without a black tie. Don't try it, because we told people, we said, listen, we're going to have security. Security was my frat brothers. They were standing at the front. And I said, turn anybody away that gives you problems. So we made all the little kids at FAMU rent tuxes, go down and get tuxes. We invited our parents out. I'll never forget, I'm standing on stage about to introduce our little movie, and the whole front row is empty. The front row was empty because that was the row that we had saved for all the Hollywood types that we had invited. Now, we invited Sony, Paramount, Fox, Warner Brothers, Disney, every last